Hi, I'm Walid Ali, and this is Journal of Global Health podcast with Dr. Anthony Dellinger, the Chief CEO of Kepley Biosystems, which is a recent startup which has won numerous grants from organizations such as the NSF. The main product right now is called Organobait. It is a synthetic bait which has numerous applications in the fishing industry, acting as a more efficient and environmentally friendly alternative to traditional bait. This traditional bait is usually made out of chopped up forage fish such as sardines and herring. As the demand for fish such as salmon increases with wildlife population, so does the pressure on the forage fish themselves, which are used as bait. In the aquaculture industry, these forage fish are also used as food for farm-raised salmon among other species, and as a result, the levels of forage fish in the wild has become dangerously low. Speaking right now with Dr. Dellinger from Kepley Biosystems. Thank you so much, Dr. Dellinger, for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk with us.
Thank you, Waleed. A pleasure.
So I guess the first question I want to ask is, what is aquaculture?
Certainly, aquaculture is a critical necessity based on a couple of factors, and it is deeply rooted in our growing population size. In 2016, fish overtook beef as the most consumed protein source globally. Sufficient fish stocks are required to feed our growing populations in our growing world. Likewise, the expansion of the middle class is providing more of a market for these commodity fish, such as shellfish or specific salmon fish, tuna fish of that nature. So there's more of a demand towards these fish right now, and it's a required demand because of the growing populations to maintain food security issues. But at its essence, it's effectively the breeding, rearing, and harvesting of plants or animals, in our case animals, in aquatic environments. And these can be offshore or onshore. They can include things like ponds or rivers, or they can actually be located coastally on oceans. And the goal is to produce seafood for human consumption, thus enhancing the amount of fish-based protein that we can harvest.
Okay, thanks. So, for those who aren't familiar, what is Organobait, the main product you're working on, and what's its possible larger role in aquaculture?
Sure. Organobait is a synthetic alternative to fish bait or crustacean bait, whereby we have taken the most commonly used baits used for different industries, be it the lobster industry, the crab industry, or even the tuna, salmon industry, the crayfish industry, and found the fundamental cues that attract these species to a trap or to a lure. And what we've done is we've engineered it in a dissolvable matrix or in a liquid form, whereby the fisher, the angler, or the commercial fishing entity could replace the need for bait fish to be used as crustacean bait or as chum to attract fish. And this solves a larger problem because with the increased demand on fish stocks and the growth of aquaculture, a majority of the fish that are used to sustain this industry are bait fish. And bait fish are what we coin as a keystone species. And when we say keystone, we refer to them as a critical element to the food ecosystem. In this case, forage fish or bait fish exchange energy from plankton to all of the larger marine species. So from dolphins to seals, seabirds, polar bears, effectively all of the fish in the ocean require bait fish, forage fish to grow and reproduce and spawn and be nutritious. Whenever aquaculture started growing so rapidly, they had to actually extract these bait fish from the ocean and grind them up for their nutritive capacity to feed to the farmed fish. So you're effectively using caught fish to raise farm fish, and it's not exactly at a 1-to-1 ratio. The ratio can be, up to 3 pounds of farmed of bait fish into 1 pound of edible protein farmed fish. And this is important because we haven't quite understood how to re-engineer the diets of aquaculture fish to make them nutritious. There's an abundance going on to make it more sustainable. But where we stand right now, we're effectively catching fish from the ocean, these oily bait fish, these middlemen of energy transfer for ocean life, and grinding them up to be fed to aquaculture. And these fish are very easily captured. Bait fish are schooling fish, so they can be net captured in great abundance. And there's been a lot of technology advancements to make the capture of these species easier and more plentiful. So with this mounting industrial demand from aquaculture to satisfy global food security, as well as supplement industries like the omega vitamin industry, using these same reduced byproducts of these fish, the fish oil, for their supplement tablets, as well as barnyard animal feed for pigs and chickens and domestic cat food feed, and human consumption, there's a lot of strain on these species right now. The goal of organobait is to reduce the strain in a very large segment of this, and that would be in the commercial fishing industry, where they're purely captured, extracted from the ocean to be put back in a trap to release a scent to draw a lobster or a crab or another marine organism to the area of interest for capture. And we've re-engineered it to replace that with just the biological chemistries that come off of these fish.
That's great. So I know in hindsight this is very apparent that a problem needs to be fixed, but for those who may not be familiar, how did you get involved in this? Like, what inspired you to come up with this idea?
So, organobait was actually an invention that was created by one of our company's founding members, Terry Brady. When he was observing these practices firsthand in the Caribbean, where he lives at, he noticed that they were spending a large amount of economies, a large amount of resources and time to capture bait fish to put back in traps to catch spiny lobsters. And initially, we approached this from an efficiency standpoint. We thought that we could make the end user, the commercial fishing entities' life, the recreational fishers' life, easier by providing them a more user-friendly, always available, consistently priced product for them to replace for bait fish. And then they could subsequently use the fish they capture for sale and make another revenue of income for their company, or they could simply save the time that they were previously wasting on capturing these fish and use this technology. When we really got into it, though, we learned that there was so much more involved with this. And that extended to all of these industries growing at the same time, be it aquaculture, the omega vitamins, all these things I talked about previously. We're just putting a crippling demand on the global stocks of forage fish. And like I mentioned, they're essential to the oceanic food web. With all of this consumption happening, and then the fact that you still must keep about 50% of them in the ocean just to sustain the natural ocean growth of all the species within it, we found that there was a real opportunity to offer an ecological solution that would create a healthier ocean and a more plentiful ocean, and also provide a serious pain point for the end users, whereby these users were either running out of bait to use, or they were getting bait at very sporadic margins, price points where it could raise based on demand. So the freezers were empty with bait, or they were, or they just were out of price to accommodate the margins they would need. That's an immediate solution for it.
Okay, so how would organobait kind of, shake up or change the current state of aquaculture?
Well, firstly, and what I really believe will happen is that organobait will relieve the strain of some 35 million tons of bait fish that are removed from the ocean right now, just to go inside of a trap to catch another, crab, lobster, or fish. So by putting another 35 million metric tons of bait fish back in the ocean to spawn and to reproduce, we we dramatically improve the state of the ocean. We also allow more fish in the ocean for these other industries to use, since we're not straining it to that point. I think it could revolutionize the way that we're approaching aquaculture right now, whereby we're investing a lot of research dollars to re-engineer the diet of these species by having them eat new or sustainable food sources, be it soy or chicken feathers or some way to gain nutrition. We could simply just re-engineer the crustacean fishing segment to use a synthetic bait, put more fish in the ocean, and then likewise be able to have enough fish to sustain the ocean in a healthy way and provide these other industries with plenty of landing to keep aquaculture functioning. So effectively, we would re-engineer the way the fisherman thinks and not the way the species thinks, and we continue feeding the species what they have genetically evolved to eat throughout their lifetime.
Okay, thank you so much. So another question I have is, I suppose with these new advances in aquaculture, are certain groups positioned to benefit more from new changes in aquaculture than other groups, or?
Certainly. I think that going back to food security, it is paramount that we have enough food to satisfy our growing population. And likewise, the demand that's increasing because of the expansion of the middle class. So I think the largest groups and entities that benefit from aquaculture are actually the individual public who's consuming the food, because the protein is readily available. But importantly, we need to ensure that the food that they're eating is of high quality, nutritious, and ultimately tasty. We don't know downstream what the effects could be from re-engineering their diet from a health standpoint or from a taste standpoint. So I think that the ultimate advantage goes to the consumers of the protein.
And I guess my last question kind of ties into the previous question. How does current trends in agriculture kind of project to impact global health going forward?
Well, fish are very nutritious. They are high in omega fatty acids. They're they're lower calorie in some cases, but very nutritious in protein source and in fat source. So I would say that a global transition to eating more fish is an overall net positive. Otherwise, certain industries like the omega vitamin industry would not have taken off as well as they have. The American Heart Association's done research where they've indicated that supplementing with omega vitamins rigorously and regularly will dramatically improve or decrease your risk of myocardial infarction. So there's a lot of medical benefits, I think, that come with consuming these nutritious foods, as well as if it's done in such a way that it's sustainable and thoughtful, it can prove to be more efficient than culturing other livestock.
So this would be a more efficient way of feeding the global population, right?
Yeah, a more efficient way of feeding the global population, and potentially a healthier food stuff. Again, going back to the omega vitamins and the fatty acids, their content, I think, have some significant, at least based on AHA reports and various medical journals, their dietary benefits are generally regarded as good.
Okay, yeah, well, thank you so much for your time, and again, we really appreciate it, shining a new light on this aspect of health, which many people might not know about. Take a lot of like fish for granted, but where does it really come from? Again, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time.